Oh, we're winging it tonight, boys. Well, hello, everyone.
Howdy.
We were supposed to have Joy of Wargaming on tonight, but so far he is not showing up. He hasn't shown up yet, so I know he was working some pretty long hours, but I thought we were hitting our window, and he had advertised he was going to be on tonight. So let's see. Oh, we'll bring him in.
What's the time difference? What was the time
I don't
difference?
know. He's in Hawaii, so 6 hours.
Well, no, I mean, like he does. This is like he think we're going at 8. Who knows? I don't know. He's a busy guy.
I don't know. He's a busy guy. Well, we'll know if at 8 o'clock he suddenly shows up. I'll be like, well, I'm going to bed. I'll see you. For those that don't know, I go to bed kind of early because, except on game nights, because I get up at like 5, sometimes earlier.
I do not. I'm a night owl.
Oh, Vinny Warmont's got us on the big TV in the family room. Well, your wife's got to love that. Sure, what a real man looks like. Well, speaking of Warmont, he just ran a halflings versus werewolves game. And it did not go too well for the halflings as expected.
That would be expected.
Well, he had pointed out how powerful the werewolf's howl ability is, which is an alpha can put out a howl that can put shock across the table. But if you have the right stats for your crew, they won't, it's a little bit easier to pass. And then I had offered up if he's going to do this as a campaign, maybe have it so maybe the next time they get a bonus on their rolls to avoid the shock from it. So
yeah.
And for everybody who's just showing up, going, where the hell is Joy of Wargaming? Well, I don't know. So he may show up at 8 o'clock. I don't know what's going on here right now. So me and Steve are gonna wing it.
It wasn't a trick. He was going to be here.
Yes, he was going to be here. But while we have everyone here, first of all, I was going to show off the jazzy new cards that Steve did for us for Battlesuit Alpha. There's the Joker.
I'm anxious to see him live in the flesh.
I love that it says Kaiju Protocol on this one. So for those familiar, the Jokers are lovely because you can use them to activate special abilities. We got the Queen has the remove shock on it with the run diagnostic. And of course, instead of healing wounds, we can repair damage this time. So Jax, we've got the targeting computer for the +1s, and then we've got the initiate close combat. So they're looking real good.
And hopefully there's not a mistake. Well, I was just talking to Jay before.
Oh, someone will find them. For those who don't know,
I hope there's not a mistake. And if it is, don't roast us.
For those that are savvy, there is a mistake in the Galactic Heroes set. Only one person's ever spotted it so far, and that was Chris Arnold.
Oh, I haven't even noticed it.
Yes. There's a slight mistake.
All I'm saying is be gentle if you find a mistake, because literally we're turning stuff out. I know as Jay's writing the rules, I was making cards for him, and I'm trying to get him so he can get them to the printer and get everything back in time for.
And we had contacted 2 different printers, and then I just heard from one of them today that said, we are no longer in business. So luckily I've got 2 different printers. So I got one here local that's going on. I also want to point out these jazzy new cups we've got in.
Oh,
that one happened to be Steve's. That's why I'm licking it, waiting for him to come in.
not wash it.
Don't wash it. Got the Joker from Tales of Horror. Then I'm wearing my my card shirt from the Brutal card deck. So
yeah, I got to get a shirt so I'm ready for recruits.
Yes. Well, we've got it. We're trying to get shirts for everybody that's going to be participating. So for those who don't know, recruits is in the end of September, 23rd, 24th, 25th, here at one of our local high schools outside of Kansas City. It is a fantastic convention. We haven't had it the last 2 years because of COVID, so this will be a nice comeback. It's fairly large. It's a 3-day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's only $5 whole to get in. And if you're a veteran or a student, it's free. So you can't really beat that. And there's always just tons of different games. They have tournaments. They have board games.
And
got board games.
They have vendors.
Yeah, they have vendors. They have a big silent auction. I will have 4, maybe 5 games going on. So we'll have Galactic Heroes, Star Wars, probably the Bounty Hunters Bonanza that Chris Arnold's going to run for us. We've got a classic.
So I've been kept from running my own games now.
Well, you're running.
Well, I'll be there all day Saturday. I'm going to be there all day Saturday.
But you'll be running the Masters of the Universe game, which is going to be inside of Snake Mountain. So you'll have our lovely caverns, Skeletor inside of Snake Mountain. Did you sign that up yet, or do I need to sign it up?
I thought you signed it up. I thought I saw on there already that you had signed it up.
So we got that. We got James Harness coming in from out of town, and he is going to run a classic reloaded game, Cowboys. And I think
Clucky's doing his, right?
I think he is going to put on his French and Indian War bigger battles in 54 millimeter. And wait a second, there's one more. Oh, I'll be running Battlesuit Alpha. So even if the books aren't out, you will still be able to play it before anybody else.
But hopefully the books are done.
Yes, hopefully we'll have the books. However, I got them into the printers, and they have 35 working days. So we'll be cutting it close if we get it. So it may literally come out. We may get them like that Monday afterwards.
I know that there are usually, and I hope now after the COVID stuff is we're back, that there's still the same number of games, because usually a person has no problem finding a game to play there.
Yep. And it's great because the name being Recruits is talking about basically it's a great way. It's really open to younger players and getting them involved. So I will have like a 11-year-old all the way up to like a 70-year-old playing in mine. It's usually the 70-year-olds that are more of a pain than the 11-year-olds. Scologram said that he can't come because Seattle to Kansas City's not in. Oh, it's cheap to fly to Kansas City. And we've got so many cool things to do once you get here.
I'll have, and for those folks that had played the Bounty Hunter, I'm sorry, I still have COVID brain, I think. The Bounty Hunter Bonanza at Battles and Brews, which I couldn't run because I had COVID, and now I can't run it because Jay's letting that damn Chris Arnold run it.
Well, you can switch off and let
somebody else run. I'm kidding. I don't care. I do have a bunch of new stuff that I had painted that I couldn't put in the Battles and Brews game because I was locked down on COVID. So they will be added into the game for recruits.
Yes, and we had quite the different crews. The bounty hunters were pretty cool. It was a 6-player scenario where you had to everyone had little tracking pucks, a la Mandalorian, and there were like a dozen different bounties walking around COVID Prime, and if you activated your tracking fob, it would show where one of them is, but it would show it to everybody. So you had to be, and then that person, and then the bounty himself would basically rat it. So you had to be careful about when you activated it, and they showed up randomly. It was quite the.
So what I'm going to have different is the first game that was run. I had it set up to where it was you either had to take, if you captured the bounty, which each bounty had its own price on their head. You can bring them in
randomly created price, which was awesome.
Yes, you can.
We had some people that like bypass somebody because they weren't enough money.
And so you can bring them in warm, you can bring them in cold. But on the first game, I just had one spot. Like you had to get the bounty to Jabba the Hutt.
Well, in this case, it was
Efont Mon, who works with
Efont Mon.
So then you had, Jay told me there was a player there that parked all his, and here's some pro tip, parked all his bounty hunters around Efont Mon and just sat there and waited for somebody to bring in bounties to him to take them away. So what I might do for the second one is
brilliant plan.
Yeah, it's great plan. But what I might do for the second version of this is have 2 places that they can take the bounties to. One being Jabba the Hutt himself, and the other point of it is being the Hutt twins from the Boba Fett. And I also might put in some Gamorrean guards. So if there's some bounty hunters that choose to just stick around in a maybe 6-inch range of the drop-off points, maybe those Gamorrean guards will come out maybe on a joke or something to poke some ass to get them moving and clear out. So we'll see. I was just looking at those rules today, and I set them aside so Chris could get them. And he's not.
And then the Masters of the Universe will just be battle in a confined space, so that'll be brutal.
Yeah, I got a lot more guys painted for that.
And we'll have we won't just have my stuff. So like I said, there's always people bring their best stuff from around the Midwest, and it's a great time. Like I said, you come in, have some real KC barbecue, do that sort of thing.
Real barbecue
for reals, and then right after that, we're gonna have Wily War Games weekend, which is the convention in my house. And then after that, we'll have Snow Brawl, which is going to be a big tournament playing the Snow Brawl games, which you haven't picked up. They're nice and cheap. It's fun. You can play with any of the miniatures you got, and it's basically dodgeball meets capture the flag, and meets Blood Bowl, and we're going to have, and both of those are fundraisers for March to Victory in March, which is going to be epic. So,
and I am hoping, and I've got grandiose plans for March to Victory next year, but Jesus, just this last couple months, my time to sit down and paint anything has vastly shrunk.
You paint stuff?
Sometimes I've got a bunch of stuff. I'll get into a run here where I got like a couple of days, an hour here, an hour there to sit down and paint stuff. But and Jay stated this: we're both professional designers and artists. When that's our living, and I know the last thing I want to do when I get home after doing artwork all day professionally is sit and do more artwork. So it's just wah. But you get tired.
So I took a whole day off, and then I did I did a generic card deck, which we just put up today. That's our first print and play. So you can just print and make your own cards. I know there's a bunch of people who uh, can't afford the shipping to wherever they live. So these you can just print off and have them for yourself. And then we'll probably be making a printed version of those too. And then, of course, we just did the Battlesuit Alpha ones. But then I'm starting on Glorious Adventures in the Age of Steam, which will be our Victorian sci-fi book, which is next. And that'll cover small scale skirmish. That'll cover bigger battles. And that'll cover starfighters. So
With Steam.
it'll be 3 supplements in one, and we just played a big Victorian sci-fi bigger battles a couple weeks ago, and it was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, that was
lots of cantankerous machines running around, somewhat questionable weaponry, that sort of thing.
Now,
So.
I know, like back to recruits, I always used to walk into that place going, I'm not going to buy anything. They don't have anything that I have any interest in. And I end up spending a ton of stuff, not just on booze. I'm kidding. No, like there's some.
Yeah, it isn't a high school, so there isn't any of that.
Yeah, there isn't any of that there. I'm kidding. But there is tons of stuff. I always end up finding stuff, whether it's silent auctions and things like that. It's a really nice convention, and I hope it's back on its full set of legs here September. But I know, like, I bought the game and I took all the stuff out of it and then threw the game in the trash. And I'm not saying that because I thought the
Which game was this?
Legion. Well, I do that with all the games.
Oh, Legion.
Legion, and I've never played Legion. I just wanted. I can't play games where it's just one-on-one. I have no interest in that because
it would be awesome if we could talk about solo wargaming.
Yeah, but where I was going to say is that at recruits they do tournaments, and I know they've had Legion tournaments there and stuff, and their tables look pretty swell. But
and they do a big Flames of War one, and I think they do a big bolt action one.
Yeah, so it's not just all Fistful of Lead games, although those are the better games.
No, there's tons. There's people that put all kinds of stuff. We usually have the big aerodrome one with the 1/72 scale biplanes on the antennas, and there's a guy did a big 2mm giant Stalingrad game, and just their jet battles, all kinds of stuff. It's really nice, and you get to kind of run the gamut of different size games and everything.
And what I like about it too is it's like going to those type of things, recruits especially, is like I can be completely burnt out on painting or what have you, and I'll go to those things and I'm like, okay, I got some ideas for some kick-ass scenarios, so I'm going to go home and start with a really slight recharge from the con, go back and start working.
Yeah.
But what were you saying about solo play?
Well, I know we were going to have Joy of Wargaming on here, who is master of solo play. And, we've talked about it. I've played a couple of good solo games in my life. There was one that Games Workshop put out back in the late 80s, Chainsaw Warrior, which was you had to battle your way up it was more of a board game, but you had to battle your way up through a chaos infested building, and basically a chaos portal had opened up on this big building, and you had to battle your way up to the top of it. And I guess you consider Choose Your Own Adventure a solo game, but we've had we have, I think the lowest usually here on a Thursday night, 6 players, and sometimes we get it to 12. So,
and we've had it where it's just you and I, or
three. And I make no qualms about, I write rules for basically convention level convention level size games. So it's just not something that I usually think about that often, but we have enough people that that play that I ended up writing a set of solo rules that sorry, I was checking the email to see if we got anybody. So I ended up writing the solo rules, but because of the way the game mechanic works with the cards, it's really, a lot of that's the fun of it is what cards I'm going to play, and and the interplay against another opponent. So capturing that solo. So I know Mini Warmut has been posting some games here lately where he's been running it, and he's actually been using the solo rules that I wrote. But then, for instance, Joy of Wargaming, when he does it more of a playing both sides of the chessboard kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And uses a sort of narrative story to do it without. He's basically creating creating a story while he's playing, kind of thing, and then lets the dice sort of to do that. Mini Warmut says Zombicide is the best solo board game,
which I have down in the basement, and I've never played it.
I've got the Zombicide. I got the Kickstarter. It was the Zombicide one in space, and I was so excited.
I got that too.
And then I got the miniatures, and they're just odd.
They're tiny heads.
Tiny little heads.
Yeah,
they don't fit in with my other stuff. So I took all the aliens from it.
That was my last Kickstarter. I'm like, okay, I'm done with that.
But I just got a Kickstarter I did that's a bunch of that works anywhere from medieval all the way up to, I guess you'd go as far as World War II, basically European buildings. So I'm very excited for those, and I should have them any minute. But they're printable, so it's all going to be print and play stuff. So, and I know that's not everybody has that.
Speaking of the Zombicide stuff by Simon or Come On or however you say it, I have the board game they did for Hate, which the figures are freaking
beautiful. Where are we going to do that?
I bought it for the figures. I got all of them, and I want to paint them and use them for Wasteland Warriors, but I've got to figure out something, and I'm sure you already have a solution for it. Nobody has guns. It's all hand-to-hand combat, so it's like gladiator style combat.
Well, basically you just play basically we just play Might and Melee.
Yeah, sure.
You wouldn't need to do if there's not going to be any kind of like mutations and stuff, then you just play
they have some stuff because they've got like some guys are like lizard guys and stuff like that.
Sweet.
They've got some really weird stuff on there, but they're real awesome sculpts. That, and then also what's the other one I have of theirs? What is it? Rising Sun or something like that?
Yeah.
Those
will be cool.
Yeah, those are awesome. Yeah, I think Warmut's I think Jay's used, maybe not, I could be totally wrong, used some Zombicide werewolves. No, where are yours?
I got
from?
a werewolf from Smog.
One I painted that you've got, and then the other ones I can't remember what they were from. Oh yeah, Smog. Yeah, I've got that too. They'll be cool for Victorian sci-fi.
Yeah. Nick, I don't know if he is. He might just be. There might be a time difference thing that's going on that he thought. He's in Hawaii, so we might be. He might just be off on his time, and then I also know that he's been working some 12-hour shifts, so he might either just be running late or maybe decide to take a nap. I wouldn't blame him. So, and if we go get him on tonight, then we'll get him on another night. But like I said, we're gonna wait till about 8 o'clock here and see if he shows up. But what are you painting on, Steve?
What's that?
So what are you painting on?
I am painting on nothing at the moment. I'm sitting here looking at what I need to paint on, and I've got so to tell you what's going through my brain for not recruits for March to Victory 2023. I want to do a Star Wars game, but I've got several games in the hopper, but one of them I want to do is a Tusken Raider raid on a town, and I've got a ton of banthas that I primed them, and I've got to sit and paint. So I've got a bunch of them, and then once I got excited because when the Book of Boba Fett came out and they released what was a war chief and stuff into the Tusken Raider world. Skullforge did some sculpts. There's some other sculpts out there.
Skullforge.
Yeah, I picked those up. So I've got a ton of Tusken Raiders. I want to paint those up and I've got the village of a village. So I might do a rescue campaign that the Tuskens have raided a town, taken some hostages, blah blah blah.
An angry young Jedi goes in and slaughters them all.
And then I keep getting pulled into Star Wars stuff, but I keep trying to do Terror Island stuff. So I am in the midst of painting a bunch of Terror Island is a mysterious lost island, and I'm painting. Let me see if I can. Where's the dang camera? I got to wash on these guys now. I got to pop the camera. Pop the color. All of these crab-like men, and then I've got like a little.
Ooh, those would be great.
And then I've got to prime that. Once you mess with all these different crab guys, I've got this giant thing to paint, a giant crab. And then I've got Captain Nemo to go with him. And I I've got a Nautilus that I'm trying to build. So I might have that. So I'm just kind of sitting here looking and sighing, going, what more shit do I have to do?
I got this fine fellow, which is a big flying ship. This will be flying over the skies of Khartoum soon. So I found this one. It is the closest I've ever come to finding what Burroughs described in the John Carter book. So it's
is that printed?
The way he, huh?
Did you print that?
Yeah. So it's just bristling with weapons. It's got these really nice, like big propellers on the back and just guns and everything like that. But it's closest to what he described. So I'm gonna have a bunch of these, and
that's gonna get so. That's gonna get
the skies of Mars.
That's gonna get so broke on your table. The bellies will be bouncing on that.
No, I will be moving them myself. They will tell me what to do, and then I will move them because they're all a bunch of cheaters anyway. So
no touchy,
especially if we do pre-plotting and all that kind of stuff. So I got those to do, and I'll take plenty of pics because part of the Glorious Adventures Age of Steam will have rules for flying ships. So this will be featured one of them, and then I'll also have rules for like brigade models, rules and stuff. So
I was just downstairs. I'll go through boxes of stuff that's half painted or things I have to paint, and I dug up the Chinese vampires, which I'd still love to do that.
Oh yeah, so we could do our Old West with the Chinese vampires.
Yeah, I really want to do that, and they're not far from being done. It's just a matter of like, ooh, shiny, ooh, shiny,
yeah,
ooh, shiny.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting on an order to come in that of some miniatures, and I know that once I get them, I'll be like, oh god, and then you've got all those remnant stormtroopers, and
yes, waiting for you to be painted.
I'll paint those up. And then I saw online.
Oh yes, our next Halloween game.
Darkfire, not this. It won't be this Halloween. I won't get them done this Halloween.
Oh, come on.
It depends. Jesus, I'm swamped and I'm traveling and this.
No, we found some zombie. We found some zombie stormtroopers. So we're gonna do an outbreak of zombie virus and have our revenant hunt that we usually have for Halloween, but this time it'll be with
call it the last outpost. Forgotten.
Yeah, and there was actually in the lore, there's a scientist who works for the Empire that likes to experiment on the troopers. And
I got a figure for him, so I've got to paint him, and he's holding a little vial and stuff. But yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun. A great game to do is do that Revenant hunt, but do it all Imperial. So you wouldn't have any rebels or anything in it. It's just Imperials.
Yep.
Yeah. So and I think it's Darkfire Designs that sells them.
Yeah.
And you can get the STL files. I think the entire group, which is like 15 figures or more for $27, I think. Don't quote me. But man, I'll tell you, I don't know if it's just coincidence or you planned it, but I look on Etsy a lot, and I don't have a printer. I rely on you and Chris or whoever to make some stuff for me. But I'll buy some stuff off Etsy here and there from a couple of shops I like. And every time I'm opening up my Etsy now, more and more and more am I seeing.
They know what you like.
No, not for me. For Battlesuit Alpha, tons of mechs, just tons of mechs. For a while, I was seeing nothing but like figures for Alien and Aliens and Predator, but I'm seeing tons of mechs, and I don't know.
Because they do come out with a rule set.
They never say the size of these things on there. They go,
if they're BattleTech ones, they're all 6mm. But as we know, you can blow them up to whatever size you want. The ones that I made are like that big.
So. Yeah, and it's like that's the thing is like, oh, I'd like to buy that. But I don't want to get it teeny tiny and then be like, oh, I'm great. Or I can't use it. I'm glad I spent the money on it.
Yeah. Well, I know, but yeah. Greg Dowdy had said that we all have games we purchased but never played and figures that we have for years and never painted. We can't buy more. Yeah, that's because if you paint them all, you die.
Yeah. If you quit buying and you quit painting, you die. So
anyway, paints all their stuff.
My problem is I have no organization. I do for the Star Wars stuff, but otherwise I've got boxes that has lead in it. And then of course I'll get to a point where I'm sitting painting on something and have an idea for a scenario for something else and go, oh, if I just had that one figure. So then I'll squirrel off and go dig through boxes and spend the night.
It's like I wrote that Prey scenario after watching the movie, and you said, "Well, you've got all those Indians I gave you," and I went, "I do."
Yeah, yeah.
I had like dig through my pile to find where I put them.
Nick says looking at Etsy can be very expensive. It is very expensive, and there's people that I've noticed just with inflation being the huge problem that it is, that people are starting to raise their prices on stuff, and if they're not raising their prices on the figures themselves, they're raising the prices of shipping, and
that's why printing is so great.
Yeah, and
because I don't have to pay for shipping, and I can just make as many as I want.
And I do like,
and instead of them taking up a metric ton in my workroom, they only take up space on my hard drive.
Etsy can be very expensive. I like to just I sit and look at it on night. I'll lay in my bed at night on my iPad, scrolling through it like I'm a little kid looking at the Sears.
Your wife thinks you're looking at porn and you slam it shut.
Oh no. She's laying there next to me reading, and she's like, "Oh, are you looking at your miniatures to get to sleep?" Like, yes.
I know, it's like looking at the catalog right before the Sears, the JCPenney's catalog.
Yeah, right before Christmas. It's like, I want this, I want this, I want this. But yeah, there's some really great stuff that people are sculpting out there, and there's some real crap that I'm like, ugh, God, that is.
Yeah, everyone's. To me, you get what you pay for, because you go on some of the free sites like Thingiverse and stuff, and I'm just like, ugh, that's garbage. So
yeah, I mean, there's some hidden.
So I get a lot of my stuff from my mini factory, and plus I also just like paying the people. Being a designer and getting paid for doing my work is nice, and and I know some people just buy my PDFs and probably give them to your friends or print off as many as they want, but that's built into
that's human nature.
That's part of the business. But when I buy from another designer, I would try to make sure I pay him. Even some of the other ones like Thingiverse will let you tip the designer. So
the thing is, now it's like, I'll look at stuff on Etsy, and I'm like, I'll see somebody selling a print of something, whatever the case may be, whatever genre it is, and I'm like, oh, that is badass. So I'll look up the designer, or AK find their STL files that they sell. Yeah. A lot of them now you can only get through Patreons. So it's like, some guys will sell this, they'll just put them on in a online store, but for the most part, everybody seems to be switching a lot to Patreons, which good for them. I totally get it.
Well, like my mini factory now has tribes. So it's basically a Patreon within my mini factory where you back a particular designer, and then you get their stuff before anybody else does.
Yeah.
Charles was not happy with his last Etsy purchase.
Yeah, and that's Charles. I hear you. I have been burnt by some stuff that I've got, and it looks like it's been. I don't even know how they printed it, and it was a mess. And I was like, well, this is just garbage.
They printed it with like a string printer instead of a
yeah. What in the hell? But there are a couple of guys that I have bought stuff, and I continue to buy stuff from on. They're my go-to guys, and they've always been. I don't know them personally at all. They've always been. They're shipped fast, excellent quality. The prints are great, but I stick with them, and it's gotten to the point just because of financial reasons and money being tight, and I don't have a lot of income to keep blowing on miniatures and stuff. I tend not to take many chances on Etsy. It's like, that looks cool, but let me see if it's in the shops I like. And if they're selling it, great. then I'll get it. If not, then I'm going to hold off and see if I can have Jay print something out for me. If I can find the STL. But yeah, it's. I think my and I for a while I'm like, is it just my definition of quality is just much different than somebody else's definition of quality? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Charles says once the vet bills get caught up, time for a 3D printer. My problem is we always have vet bills. They never go.
Well, the other thing is, I'm going to get a raise when my dog finally dies. She's on so many meds, but we've talked about 3D printing before, and it's great, but there is a learning curve. It's not that bad. And then there's also just constant maintenance. Like I replaced the parts on a couple of my printers. Like they're brand new machines. They've been printed over and over. So yeah, I belong to a couple of Patreons, and they, after a couple of months, I'm like, this stuff's just weird. I don't care about this anymore. Uh-oh.
What?
What are we doing today?
All right, there he is. Hold on, I'm trying to get him on here. Hey, he's on the road. He showed up.
Why did my clock tell me that there's 4 hours difference between Central and Hawaiian?
Well, no, guess not. Well, isn't Hawaii one of those ones? It's like Arizona where it's sometimes you're 4 hours and sometimes you're 5, like you don't have daylight savings?
That is correct.
There you go.
Half the year it's 5, half it's 4. Very weird. No, I actually, well, listen, that's boring stuff. All right, we got rid of the logistics. First of all, I deeply apologize for being so late to the show. I hope you'll still have me for a little bit of time.
Sure, yeah. No, I mean,
no worries. We were just telling dirty jokes for a while. We're all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Steve took his shirt off for a while, and we talked about personal grooming and stuff like that.
Gotcha. I'd like to open. I'd like to take a moment by just say a prayer for the restful repose of Paul Beckus. He was one of the all-time greats on the YouTube and just around the kind of digital water cooler. We're going to feel his loss over the coming years, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was going to give him a little mention send-off before we cut for the night. And I didn't talk to the guy personally, but he was always good in the comments and stuff like that. So
exactly. And then let me thank you for having me on the show. I want to assure you I'm a huge fan of Wiley Games. I think you've really captured lightning in a bottle with these games. They scale so well in so many different ways. I don't think I've ever encountered a game that can handle everything from 5 figures to 50 or 100 figures equally easily. And it scales across genre too. Most games handle everything up through like modern combat really well and then break down, or they handle ancients really well, and when we get to modern they break down. But just a few simple tweaks, the fistful of games like library is it's astonishing.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
Awesome.
But what I've run into is I'm trying to sell everybody on just exactly what you said, but there's for every person that wants to, I want to have werewolves versus Romans. There are people that want to be told exactly, here's my army set, and here's their stats, and here's how to paint them and all, and that's fine. There's people that just, they want to have that. And I want to have a playlist, and I want to be competitive, and I want to play against somebody else. And we've made these particular armies all set up, with their point systems and all that kind of stuff. But then there's people like us that are just, hey, I saw that movie Prey, and now I want to have Native Americans fight predators, or I want to have, I see.
I've got these miniatures that are just completely bonkers. There's no actual IP behind them. Just a sculptor thought this would be fun, and
that's the
I need to get them on the table.
Yeah, I like playing. I will buy miniatures. I will buy miniatures because I like the way it look, because I'm a painter. I want to paint that miniature, and so then I want to play with them. Well, how am I going to play with them? We mentioned earlier I got in a Kickstarter for the Zombicide in space, and I ended up hating all the humans, but I like the aliens, so I painted up all the aliens, and then right after that, one of my buddies gave me a bunch of Elizabethan era miniatures, and so now I'm going to do what really happened at Roanoke Island. So it's basically a meteor crashes, and it's not a meteor, it's an alien craft, and that's what they had a little Rorke's Drift with alien monsters versus early American colonists.
Right, right.
And that's the thing I've got. We were talking about earlier before you came on about just collecting crap and not getting it painted, and it's just, it's like if you quit collecting stuff or you quit painting stuff, you're gonna die. So you just keep collecting and you keep painting. But it's like I have boxes and boxes of miniatures down in the basement that before Fistful of Lead came around, I had no idea what the hell I would ever do with them. It was just a cool. I thought it was a cool looking figure. I got downstairs somewhere an orangutan with a laser gun or something. It's like, what the hell am I going to do with this? I don't know. One day I'll figure it out. Well, that someday is now, and I can add them into Galactic Heroes or add them into a group for Wasteland Warriors. So it's like I can start painting on all this stuff that was just kind of weird.
So it's a great incentive to like dig down deep into that box and pull that stuff out and actually get it on the table.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like you go to hobby store.
I want to talk to you guys about how it scales from 8 players to 1 player. And Fistful of Lead works equally well at both of those scales, because not a lot of games can handle, adjusting that level, let alone as well as Fistful of Lead does. And I want to go deep here. If you give me just a minute,
go deep, baby.
To kind of explain why it does, and I think we need to think about these things because it helps us become more aware of what we're doing at the table, and the more aware we are, the more we can. To understand why this works, you got to understand a concept called cognitive load, and just based on what it's called, you can kind of understand what it is. Yeah. We all have a certain ability to take in information, process it, and come to a decision based on that information. And some games have a very low cognitive load, like Candyland, right? You don't really have any decisions, but you still have to do some analysis. You draw a card, and you have to find the color, and you have to move your piece. It's a great introductory game for kids. You have to be aware of whose turn it is. Very low cognitive load. A game like and I'll also point out, I don't think people understand that your cognitive load is not just what's going on the table, right? If I sit down, if I invite you over to my house and we're playing a game across the table, I'm not just thinking about the game. I'm thinking about, are the kids being too loud? Is it distracting you? Is it too warm in here? Can I get you a drink? Is it okay if let me get an ashtray? Because I don't mind if you smoke in my house. These are thoughts that you have that are like, they're adding to your load. And the great thing about Fistful of Lead is that it's because it's such a toolkit, you can pull out pieces of that cognitive load and you can kind of plug and chug as you need to go. So when you're at a convention game with 8 guys, you don't have to remember all of the little details about where we're at in the turn order and what modifiers am I using and what actions am I taking. You got 7 other guys sharing the load for that. What that does is it frees up your brain to play the activation game. And so, I got 5 cards and I'm looking around the table and I want to maybe bluff my way. I want you to spend your high cards on the wrong figures so I can use mine right. And when it comes to solo wargaming, the reason it works so well is that I can just not worry about which figure is going next. that's one of the decisions you have to make when you're either playing one-on-one or with 6 guys around the table. Do I want to move that guy? Do I want to move that guy? Well, the cards can do that for you. And the dirty little secret, the reason it's just as much fun to play Fistful of Lead solo is that just because you've taken away a decision from yourself as the player in one area, that doesn't mean you've reduced the number of decisions you have to make. All it's done is it's freed up your ability to make decisions elsewhere. So that's one of the things I really wanted to hit on, like right out of the gate, is that people tend to get lost in, well, how do I make an AI work? And how do I do this solo? It doesn't matter, because however you do it, you're not really adjusting the cognitive load. You're not adjusting like how challenging the game is. All you've done is decided which branch of the challenge you're going to lean out on. You follow me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I've downloaded the solo rules on wiley-games.com. A lot of free stuff, and the solo rules are available. Now, Jay, you have admitted outright this is not play tested. It's just here's some speculation stuff.
Yeah, and the people who have played haven't really ever got back to me. They're free to, of course, give me some feedback on whether it's working or not. Minnie Wormut, who's on here, he's been running a Halflings versus Werewolves game using it, and it seems to have worked fairly well. But I also, like you said, I did it 3 or 4 times and just put it out there because I just got enough people to like, is this solo game? Can I play this solo? I'm like, you can, but it also, to me, it's part of the card mechanics, what you talked about, or what makes it or special. But you do it a little bit different in that you're kind of playing both sides of the chessboard a little bit more and less worried about AI, which I think is what people want. So a lot of popular rules that have solo mechanics, it's a bunch of charts and stuff, right? Like,
right.
I roll, and this guy, he'll run up and shoot, or this guy's going to mill around, or whatever. And I didn't want to do all that stuff, really.
Right. Or you have an algorithm that if this is a shooty guy, then if he's not in cover, he'll move to cover until he is, and then he'll shoot at the nearest enemy, and all kinds of like if-then statements. And that's what's elegant about the system that you've devised. And I haven't played it yet. It's on my list of things to do. We'll get there, and I'll do some video play testing and like proof of concept. But that's what's neat about it is that you deal out.
You can give me notes because no one else has. So
will do. But that's the neat thing is that you deal out the card. You just deal 1 card to each figure, each group or figure, and then the card itself tells you. So you found an elegant way to like pack a mini AI into the activation system, which is elegant. And I think it's really smooth. But you're right. The way I typically do it, because I'm playing with toys. So the way I've done it is I will just deal out a card, like without looking. I'll just deal cards to each of my figures for both sides. And then I can step back and I just take it one at a time. Okay, whose turn is it to activate? And the only decision you have to make is if somebody gets an ace, now you got to kind of file in the back of your head. Okay, I'm going to do all of my kings and all. Right. And so you've got that like background decision that you have to make. And it seems to work reasonably well. But again, it's not like I'm playing against an AI opponent. It's just I'm going to line up my, next on the docket for me is British Redcoats versus Xenomorphs. Yeah. So, I just want to see what happens if Redcoats meet Xenomorphs. And I don't have a vested interest in like the who's going to win. It's just a case of analyze the table state for the card that's activating now. What makes the most sense for that unit, given the card that they have? Yeah.
Because
that's what we do all the time.
Well, that's the hard part with the system. Why I had a hard time kind of wrapping my head around it is the fact that I get my deck of cards and I've got a unit here who's out of ammo, or I got a single miniature who needs to reload or something. Obviously, I want that 6 card or that ace to become a 6 card to go to that unit. And if it's a random thing, well, it would make sense that if I was an actual human player playing that side, I would want to use that card for that. Or I have a wounded character. Well, obviously want to use the Queen of Hearts to fix him rather than it randomly going over to another unit that doesn't need it. So that was that's the hard part of playing with the system as it is, that I had a hard time wrapping my way around.
And I wouldn't, one of the things to be aware of when it comes to AIs is that every single solo game that, or even like multiplayer games that use an AI, if it's solo if it's, cooperative against the game, at least in the tabletop world and tabletop miniatures, every single AI program has as its last step, don't be an idiot, right? The figures are not idiots.
Don't do something that it wouldn't normally do.
You have to know when to abandon the programmed AI to do something that's more sensible. And it may be as simple as, at the start of the game, before anybody's activated, swap 2 cards. So you've got a limited ability to say, I really need the guy with 3 wounds to have that Queen of Hearts, so I can swap these 2 cards. But if you've got a guy that needs a reload, a guy that needs to go first, and a guy that needs a Queen of Hearts, pick 2, right? You can swap 2 of those. And that way you still have the randomness that you're going up against as a player. That may be the other option to add to your table when you do this.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way we have it set up is, if anyone who hasn't seen it, is I take my deck of cards and I get to look at them, and the AI is just, you flip a card, and if, you decide that you're going to play and they decide to flip it, and then whoever gets the highest gets to go first. So it kind of takes some of the flow out of it, but, it's best I could come up with at the last minute.
Well, but this gets back into the whole like fistful of lead ethos, is that it is so robust and it is so open to experimentation that, I mean, I can think of 12 different ways to play solo that would all be equally challenging, and maybe 2 of them would be absolutely no fun and no fair. But, a lot of it is just what kind of experience you're looking to get out of it. And you can get the experience you want just by thinking about, well, what is the experience I want? Now, how do I implement a system to do that? So, like for me, I just want to see what happens when these 2 guys go at each other. And when you do that, the fact that the right card isn't going to come up for one side is balanced by the fact it's no more like.
Yeah, I had
up with randomness is going to balance it out for you.
Yeah, we had a kind of on that same thing was, there was a question on Lead Adventure Forum. There was a guy had asked, well, how many people can you play with, and how many miniatures can you play with before the system breaks? I was like, well, there's 52 cards in a deck, so you can't have more units or miniatures than that. And we've played with that many. We've played Starfighters with 52 miniatures out there, and we've played bigger battles a lot with 8 players, and they've each got 5 to 7 units. And what it changes is the fact that all the cards are going out there, so you're not going to. That's not even really true either, because the possibility that you're going to get a certain card is just the same as it would be at a smaller level. So I guess that part of it doesn't really break down either. And then you have to limit putting jokers in it, because obviously if you got that many players, it's more likely, that many cards being dealt, it's more likely that it's going to come out. And you have to work that into your scenario. That almost every turn, if you're going to play with the Joker being an event, that's going to happen, or you just don't play with it like that. So, that's basically what I told him, is like, we haven't found a way to break it yet. So I guess that's good.
Well, and we wargamers are notoriously good at bending game systems until they break. So the fact that you haven't had any reports of that is It's
Well,
definitely a mark in the game.
I don't get a lot of direct feedback a lot specifically, but we get questions on the Facebook page or questions on the shop, about specific things about maybe how a certain rule works or a sequence thing or something. Like there's a guy that asked if with the 2 actions whether you could break up your move and move 3 inches, then shoot and then finish the rest of that movement. And I was like, no, that would be 3 actions. So no, you can't. So there are certain things, and the reason why it's that way specifically is if you're playing a game with a lot of terrain, say like a World War II game or something, if you have that ability to pop out, shoot, and then pop back, nothing ever happens because everyone's just in their little hidey holes.
Right.
I realize that's probably more realistic, but that's not why we want to play. And one of our house rules is, when someone will say, well, can I see him or I can't see him behind this piece of terrain? I'm always like, you can, because the whole point here is us to be rolling dice and interacting and not sitting in our little camps behind a wall and doing it. So if there's a question, then yes, they always can shoot.
Right.
But that's more of a philosophy and less of a rule. So,
well, and that's where the hiding as an action comes in. Look, I've spent one of my resources to not be seen. Now you have to spend a resource to negate the resource that I spent.
Yeah.
So that's how that comes in. It's not an automatic. It's if you want it, it's going to cost you.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if you were seeing any of our other
one thing that, and I have not played solo play because generally when I play, I'm at Jay's house and there's a ton of guys over there to where we've had to institute, which would be wonderful to play solo play because you wouldn't have this problem, is that we, like Jay said, we've got usually 6 to 8 guys playing there and you're trying to get the cards to turn and keep people going. It's like, okay, hey, what card are we on? With tens. Come on, who's got a 10? And so we've made a house rule. It's like, we're going to call the card. If you don't put your card down, you've lost your turn. Which you don't have if you're doing solo.
Your guy wasn't paying attention.
Right.
He was scared. He was looking at his watch. So, but I don't know if you've seen on any of our stories, but the whole rule system was created because some guy pissed me off at a convention once. So I was at one of my first big wargaming conventions, and there was a guy who was running this beautiful cowboy game and everything. And I tried to talk to him afterwards, and I waited till he was done and everything. And I asked him about the rules, and he just kind of brushed me aside. And I was like, all right, fine. I'm going to write my own rules. And I decided I want to have a card activation. And at the time, the only cowboys you could buy were Dixon miniatures. And there was a guy selling some. I just bought a handful of them and started messing with it and everything. And my background's I started out in role playing and D&D and red box, actually pre-red box edition, and I had always painted little Airfix miniatures and stuff growing up, and so I started, D&D started out as a war game too. So anyway, that's where I came from. I came at it from that, and I came at it from a storytelling perspective and how you craft a narrative, and I wanted it to be more Hollywood, and I wanted it to be to have those moments where stuff happens and you're like, hey, remember that game where that guy did that? I want to have that kind of thing happen. So that's where my philosophy comes at it from. And I know that's totally different from other people who are competitive gamers or people like we talked about that want to have, defined things that you can do. And that's where the task role came in, because I wanted to just have a role that if you want to do something that's maybe not covered in the rules, well, you just decide is it something to be easy to do, regular to do, hard to do, and you roll the dice. So, and
it's easy to tell if it's the kind of thing that would be hard for a normal person, but your character, archetype means that you're good at that thing. Then I guess you get a bonus to the roll, or it becomes medium for you instead.
Well, I was going to ask you. I know you had stuff you wanted to say out of the gate, but I was going to ask you whether you were doing solo because of you enjoy that aspect of it, or you're just forced to be a solo player by virtue of where you live and war game, not having people to play with, or whether you just like that aspect of it. And
for now, it's mostly the latter. Although I'll say this, I don't like I am not really a solo war gamer because I always have the viewer over my shoulder. Like I don't play a lot of games unless the camera is already running. I just don't have time, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But so, you know, I always have friends in the room, even if the room is, you know, 6 months from now. But a large part of it is just the sheer logistics. And I live in a community of 1 million people. It's on an island in the middle of the Pacific. You know, it's a 5-hour flight to the nearest big city. And there's not a huge war game culture out here. It's because it's an Eastern, the immigration here is dominated by the Pacific Rim. The like kind of nerd culture is slanted heavily sort of thing. So there's no real war game conventions. We have a couple of very good shops for the comic books or kind of the you know, what we think of as the nerd hobby, role-playing games and miniature war games.
Yeah.
But they've got tables there. And so most of the like public gaming where you would go to meet people it's done, and that's like an hour and a half from the house. So I just logistically, it's like, you know, I can spend 3 hours in the car or I can spend 3 hours solo gaming. I'll just take the solo for now. Well, and I've got young kids, which limits the time. And so, you know, it's one of those things. Yeah. Once they're out of the house and I have an empty nest, oh man, Katie, bar the door. The wife's never going to see me.
Well, I mean, we run into a little bit. What's weird is, like you mentioned, the whole East Coast thing. Like, where are the largest conventions at? Well, they're all on the East Coast and everything. We're trying to break that here because we have a huge wargaming community. There's something weird about Kansas City. We've got a ton of individual wargame groups, and they're all just scattered about. But they're all like, you know, 8 to 12 people, and there's a crap ton of them. And so when we have a convention, they're fairly big for what they are. But you know, we're in a way our own little island, also in the middle of the country. You know, you can drive where we're at. You can drive 12 hours in any direction, and you will not hit a coast. So, we call it the no coast state. But at the same time, there's like this big community, and we keep telling them, like, it's cheap to come here, man. The flights are cheap to drive. Gas is cheap here. Just come on out. So we're trying to build our own thing here because we've got the people to do it. So, and we're we were just talking before you came in. We've got a local convention called Recruits, specifically about bringing new people into the hobby. You know, young kids are welcome, and as well as the older guys. And I'll have anybody from 11-year-old to the 70-year-olds, and it's usually the 70-year-olds that I'm most annoyed with when I'm running a game, because ones that want to win, you know, and I'm always the guy that's just like slant it more towards for the kids to.
Well, yeah, it's like if you got some.
I don't know if he can hit me, and I'm like, oh no, he can hit you, he can see you, but I'm behind. Nope, he can see you.
It's like, let the kid win. We're trying to get people into this hobby, you know, not kill it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I wanted to know that that makes sense, especially with you saying that, you know, you're not really alone because you've got the crowd watching and everything. And so I really liked your videos on the compare and contrast sort of thing, and I agree with everything you've said about it. So, as far as you know, my rule system versus another one, especially with some of the bigger names and stuff. But you know,
it's all about the right tool for the job. Yeah, you know, there are a number of games that I have bought and I've read, and I thought, I'm not going to review this because I can't give it a positive review for anything. It's a terrible game, and just to keep it positive, it's like I would much rather say, look, here's a great game. If you want X, you know, a decent review is this is who this is good for. And there are a couple of games I found, and I'm like, this game is good for serial killers. You'd have to be a complete lunatic to enjoy this. I'm just not. That's not my audience. I mean, I know that might be exclusionary, and I might be gate. killers and move on. There's plenty of other hobbies for you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm not. I went to art school. I didn't go to math school, so I'm not playing that one. But,
right.
Yeah, and I mean, and like I said, there's as many different kind of war gamers as anything else. So there's people who really want a particular feel for something, and like as we've discussed, they like, I want a miniature line that goes with this, and I want to be told how to paint, and like Steve.
I want a box.
Yeah, Steve had said earlier that he had bought all these Legion figures, but then threw the rules away and all the little doodads that came with it and started painting them up just so we could play with our rules. So
and it wasn't a swipe it that I didn't like Legion. I have still yet to even read a Legion rule book. But the thing was, and I'd said that Legion, and I could be totally wrong, it appeared that Legion was one player versus another player. And it's like, well, if I paint this up just for Legion, I'm never going to play this thing because I don't ever play with just one other person. So that's when Jay had started Galactic Heroes, and I just took the Legion stuff and just threw it. And like, we'll make this for Galactic Heroes.
We need to send the second edition out to you. So, and that was the other thing. I don't know if anybody knew. I think you mentioned it on your website. Is you had been on not Jay's YouTube, and I had watched that, and I was like, oh, this guy just ordered from us. So we were like, you had ordered like one book, and we just sent you one of everything we had, or one of a lot of the things.
Which is much obliged, yeah. And it would have wound up in my collection anyway because I enjoyed. I think I ordered the three. I was kicking myself for not getting the fantasy hardback. I have agents out trying to figure out where those are located.
We don't have. They're all gone.
I know, right? I discovered it like I discovered Fistful of Lead, like the Wiley games, like literally 2 days after that sale closed. And, it'll be one of the things that I carry to my grave. But someday I've got agents out looking for hardbacks. If you have one in your collection, put it in a vault because they're going to come find you.
Steve does all the covers for those.
Yeah, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. I tell you that right now. The question I have for me and McMurray.
Oh God, you had to bring up McMurray.
The new cards.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. McMurray lives in St. Louis, which is 3.5 if you haul ass, 4 hours if you drive like a normal person. And there's been Thursdays that he's unannounced driven out here and made it in 3 and just showed up at my door. Hey, you got room to play? So that's McMurray.
Yeah, he strikes me as that kind of guy.
Yeah. What you were going to say, sorry. You were asking a question for you and McMurray.
Oh, yeah. When are we getting Fistful of Lead Age of Sail?
Oh, God.
Well, right now, the closest you're going to get is the Victorian flying ships for my Victorian sci-fi rules that are coming out next. So you'll have flying ships. My whole thing is this: I've got limited amount of time, and it's just I've just never been a naval player. There's no terrain other than islands, and there's just especially Age of Sail, having to mess with keeping track of wind and all that kind of crap. And I just don't like painting the miniatures. And if I don't like painting the miniatures, then I don't want to do it. I might do, I don't know. I like medieval stuff. And I used to have these huge pirate ships, and I have all the Foundry pirates. And we used to do like big pirate ships stuff. And we used Thomas Foss's pirates rules. And those were a lot of fun because you had to guesstimate your ranges. You would say, okay, I think that's 35 inches. And so you would just take your marker and you'd put it out there. And if you guessed it right, then you hit. And then you would do all the damage and stuff on the ship. And there were people who were just really good at that, and they just dominated. But it's not, I've got to do stuff that I like to paint first. And if I don't like painting it, then I just don't want to do it. Now, if someone else would like to figure it out, we can work together.
Well, and that's the answer, right? Is when somebody says, hey, I want X, welcome to the do-it-yourself hobby, brother. Do it.
Yeah.
Show me what you got.
Well, it's like we did Starfighters, and Chris Arnold has been taking it and using it for like jets, like early jet period and stuff. Works great. I took it when I messed with it because I have a bunch of Crimson Sky stuff, the pulp era play
yeah.
for the America That Never Was. And
that's
we ran
what's
a
great.
game with that, and all I did was I added deflection, so you're shooting at different angles gives you a plus or minus, and which I didn't put in Starfighters because one, I was like, it's a laser, I don't think it's going to care whether you're coming at a different angle, and I didn't mess with altitudes because it's a 3-dimensional space, and I didn't want to worry you. You're a TIE fighter, and it's like, no, you're coming at it from all these different crazy angles. So there's a guy on our webpage, Al Aguila. I'm gonna say his last name. He's from Firelock Games. Did Blood and Plunder and all that kind of stuff. And he's taken them and has put he did a little addendum to do World War I fighters with it, and he added a simple altitude tracking thing. You just keep track on the plane and angles of attack, and threw in some different maneuvers like Immelmans and stuff like that. So
so some planes turn easier to the right than the left because of
so some of them you can make a turn farther than the normal 45. You can crank it around quicker because they've got that radial engine that lets them really crank it. So and just needs some play testers. So if there's any, I'm always open. Anybody wants to take them and mess with it, I'll give them credit. I'll even, if it's a whole overhaul, I'll even give them throw some money their way from the sales and stuff. But Wargamers are lazy, so
yeah.
We'll see if that ever happens.
Busy, I would say. This is not a low time preference hobby, man. You got to be willing to invest a lot before you sit down to do the actual hobby itself.
Me and Steve are full-time designers and stuff. So I got it just like you. I got a full-time job, and then I'm not only writing the rules and doing all the layout and editing and all that kind of stuff, but I'm also painting miniatures that go in the photos, and we're play testing all the time. I mean, luckily I have a play test group, and I've got some people that are really good at trying to find, ways to break it or,
for the most part, when we're play testing stuff, the great thing about Fistful of Lead is we've bent the crap out of that stuff, and it's still like some things might say, that might be a little bit weird, but we haven't really broken. I don't feel that we've ever really broken anything, and we played 8 people. When we do bigger battles, how many miniatures did we have for the Star Wars bigger battles thing? It was
we had like over 250 miniatures for that one, so that was huge. And we had
if anything, it really becomes a question of not does this work, but does it work to evoke the feeling that we're trying to evoke. And like in the bigger battles, the decision to allow for a unit that needs to reload can still fire at half dice is a brilliant system, because it represents the fact that, look, you still have these weapons and you can still, fire kind of scattershot. You're just not going to have that same overwhelming blast. So
it's supposed to be whether it's an ordered shot or where you got troops in line and they're sticking to their orderly fire, or they're just taking ragged pot shots, kind of a deal.
Right. So it's not a question of what it works, but that wouldn't work. But that wouldn't work in like Galactic Heroes. So you don't do it in a Galactic Heroes style game, because even though it's still the game is still fun, it's not evoking what you want to get out of a Galactic Heroes battle.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's really, I think, where you're at with the system right now is you're not playtesting to see if you can break it. You're just playtesting it to see if the rules that are in any given title are evoking the
Yeah.
mood or the, like, I guess, genre that you're trying to that's got on the tin.
Yeah. So we had perfect segue is I just put on our Facebook group, and then we'll have I don't know if she put it in there in the store or not, but it should be on there for free. Our friend Chris Cluckamuck did his one-page addendum for French and Indian War for bigger battles, and he did things like you have to test to see whether you'll charge or not, and it depends on what kind of troops you are. So you won't just necessarily just run in automatically. It's just a task roll. And he did, he made specific for the different kind of well-trained troops, continental troops versus provincials versus the natives, and, kind of broke down the actual sizes of the units and how they operate. It's just a one-page addendum, and it works beautifully. He ran it at our Battles and Brews last month or month before, and it was great. Worked out perfectly, and it was just exactly what you said. It's fine. It was finding just a little fine tuning for each kind of period, and that's all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, "Well, how many troops should I have in my Roman big battle unit? How many Celt should I have?" And so I'm like, well, it's just going to take you playing and tweaking. There's a guy in Lit Adventure Forum, Captain Jim, and he just did a big Zulus. He's doing a big Zulus campaign with it. And he did the same thing. He's like, okay, I found that the British work best with the 10-man unit, and the Zulus do good with 18 or whatever. And that seemed to be gave you a good balance of, firepower versus I don't have any firepower. How many casualties could the Zulus take and still be able to close, that kind of thing, and have like that kind of fight, that kind of work strip is San Luanda kind of thing. And I know that puts kind of the pressure on the player to kind of figure that out, and eventually we'll put out little supplements and stuff for it. But at the same time, we had to write a set of rules that worked for antiquity to modern and beyond. And we also had to make it, feel right for each kind of period. So yeah, I agree. Long answer with agreeing with you on that.
Just more examples of how well it works. That's appreciated. I'll say this. I do have one criticism, though. There's one thing I don't like about it. It's hard to film because there's things going on all over the table, and I'm that's tongue in cheek. You paying attention?
Yeah.
It's another strength of the system is that you're never really bored, because you either need to pay attention to what that guy's doing, or you need to be paying attention to what you're doing, or you need to be, or even if it's just paying attention to what card's coming up right now. So it makes it hard to like bounce around for like the filmmaker, but unless you're a solo, YouTube internet influencer personality show off, it does not apply. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah. Well, like we said earlier, we have the rules for the guys who don't pay attention. You miss your card, then you're done. You miss that. So, I don't think that would apply to you when you're playing. So.
No, my opponent is really good about letting me go back and fix fix those little errors,
especially in the editing room. So
that happens from time to time where we just kind of set things back up.
Okay, we forgot this. We're going back.
We'll replay that turn and hope nobody notices the edit.
Yeah, we've the hardest part I had to cut out because we got too many people, and when you've got 8 people talking, it's hard to keep track for the people who are trying to watch to learn, how to play. So now I've got to where I just edit down 3 hours into 15 minutes. So as you know, you get those optics from YouTube, and they tell you exactly how long people watch your shit.
Yeah, well, and that's the like big channels, Little Wars TV, CP, was it CP Tabletop?
Yeah.
That's what they
Isn't that
do.
who we're all trying to be?
Yeah, well, you know, these guys have 10,000 followers, but they'll do that where they'll do the live stream of the whole game, and I can't watch it because it's like 4 hours, and who's got time for that? But then they put together like a 1 hour summary. Works really well, and that's kind of the nature of the beast, is that it's the games we play it's like real world combat, where it's like 45 minutes of just getting to the good parts, and then like 10 minutes of this is where it really matters. Or like a basketball game, right? Like typical basketball games, the first 58 minutes are like, yeah, there's some back and forth, but you got to get through it to get to that last 2 minutes where you're on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, and that's how most of our games go too. There's usually 2 turns where everything happens and everything gets decided, basically. So, and we had our last game we did, that was the Mexican Revolution. It actually was kind of different because there was a lot going on leading up to it, but it was a 6-turn limit, basically. And on the 6th turn, the Federales generals had burned all their intelligence and their telegrams, and they were going to split town, and it came down to the 3 card on the last turn. Basically, we got down to 3s, got called out, and that's when the generals got basically caught. So it was 1 card away from them escaping, and you like those little nail biter kind of things. And of course, it was some just peon with a machete that I had somehow managed to avoid all the shooting, jumped the wall and ran and got him at the last second. So those are the ones that you get to talk about and stuff. So those are the fun ones. I'm trying to, I've been posting.
Well, and you can't force that stuff. You know, when you force it, it's unearned. It just falls flat. But when it happens organically, that you have, and it doesn't matter where it goes at that point. It's the fact that here we are, and we're on the last card of the last turn, and you know, this die roll decides it. Whether he succeeds or not, it doesn't matter. You're going to take that with you. You're going to remember that moment because of the drama. And you know, that's the kind of thing that we want to share with other people about how great this hobby is.
Yeah, there was a moment in the last season of Stranger Things when they're playing D&D, and it comes down to the last roll, and you see the dice kind of dink, 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 and they all scream and everything. And he was like, and that's why we do it. And that's kind of how I felt about it too. I have a question from Todd over at Wardrobe. He wanted to know what you use to film your videos with. I don't know if that means system or cameras.
I just use my cell phone. I just have a Galaxy. It's like 2 years old.
Yeah.
And a little mini tripod. That's really all you need.
Yeah, I agree. I went and bought all the stuff, and now I've gone back to shooting a lot of stuff with just my phone. So I've got several cameras that I've yet had to figure out how to put them up at the same time.
I honestly think with the state of technology these days that any phone that is less than 2 years old, you're going to do fine. The big thing that you need is light.
Yep.
You cannot have too much light on the table. Yeah. Where a lot of channels fall down is that it's really bright in the foreground and dim in the background.
Yeah.
And sound is big, you know, because a lot of people, half the videos that I watch while I'm driving. Like I watch. I mean, just background noise. And that's the other thing that my own weakness. I need to be better about not using pronouns. Pronouns are not your friend when you're doing this. It's not he moves to him and then he does that. It should be, you know, this sapper moves to the wall where he fights the orc. You know, that's really where the viewer, who's half the time. How many of us watch war game videos while we're painting? I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking at the figure in my hands. And so using less pronouns, and that's one of the benefits that you guys have is with multiple players. You know, when Jay says, I'm moving my leader here, the voice gives you that indication of who's doing that. Yeah,
Well,
and that's because it's Todd. I'll say this too. One of the things that Todd does, one of the reasons I like his channel is that he like compartmentalizes that cognitive load we were talking about earlier, where he doesn't keep up a running patois while he's playing. He'll play a turn, and so his whole mind is focused on the like strategies and moving, in his case, chits around more often than not, the hex encounters. And then he says, all right, time out. Now I'm going to use my entire cognitive load to tell you what just happened in a way that is engaging and interesting. And even if you're not a hex encounter, you can learn a lot from the guy because he does compartmentalize more than I do in my video. So just a different style, but it works really well when you've got the right host.
I agree. I borrowed some of it for the last game where I just sort of set up the game, told you about it, and then, okay, into turn 1, this is what happened. Into turn 2, here's what happened, kind of a thing, rather than going through the whole thing.
And the benefit with that is that you know how it ends. So you can even start your like narrative, you can start laying the groundwork for that twist ending, right? Oh, this guy got away. I wonder if that's gonna matter.
I wonder if that's gonna happen. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also you can build up for we were talking earlier about the whole sort of story of everything, and what's been weird is over the years we've had certain little pieces of lead that have developed their own little personalities, that have, this guy always survives. This guy is a loser. He'll die in the first turn of every game that we've ever played. Like we had Juan Jorge. We did a Terror Island game, which is kind of like a whole game. And Steve just had a little throwaway character. He was an old, I don't remember if he was the pulp figure or something like that. He was just a grunt. He wasn't even anybody. The guy has consistently been a holy terror on the field. And so he's just a piece of lead. But everyone sees him. They're like, where is he at? I want to be away from that guy. So
and that's part of the fun is that our brains, like, we're evolved to we are a pattern recognition animal, right? We need to recognize those patterns, so when the lion appears in the bushes, we say, oh, the pattern is broken. And so we can find a way, and we personalize these things. But that's this is where I tend to clash on the RPG front with the people that they talk about how their games have plots and stories, and I'm like, you can't force that stuff. You don't know who's going to survive, and if you're not actually playing a game.
Exactly.
You're telling a story, and I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong or bad, but let's keep the labels correct. Because if I'm coming to you because I want to know about a game, don't tell me a story. And if I want to hear a story, I don't want to play a game, right? These are two different things. And one of my hobby horses is just kind of understanding that everything we do in the best stories, like our games, are story generators because we can find those patterns of and even across tables where, like you said, why does this figure keep surviving? Well, I don't know. That's just his personality, and we imprint on it. And when he does die, that one character, you're going to start to depend on him until suddenly, just the sheer law of probability, the streak is going to end, and it's going to be like, I've known guys that had that situation and they retired the figure. They're like, all right, he finally died. He goes on the shelf in a place of honor.
He is never played with again. He is.
Yeah.
Well, and I've added Juan Jorge to other games. So like there's a call sign for one of the mech pilots. That's his call sign, is Juan Jorge and stuff like that. So he's made other appearances everywhere. Solo RPG guy wanted to know if Mr. Wargamer is still triggered by owlbear.
I was just about to mention
that game versus an owlbear to overcome his weakness.
Every time I put owlbears in a game, they just wreck my stuff. They just blow everything up. So
they're my favorite D&D characters or D&D monsters. So,
and that's the funny thing, is they are mine too. Like, I was not sold on the D&D movie until the owlbear showed up, and then I was like simultaneously triggered and like sold. I'm in.
Yeah, that showed up on the trailer, and I jumped up, and my wife's like, "What are you screaming about?" I'm like, "It's an owlbear!"
And they nailed it. Like, it's the concept that should be ridiculous, but they just. They just
Yeah, it's
nailed it.
magic, chef's kiss. Well, we've had Todd said his best Wily game memory as a human that was lying down and was being attacked by a werewolf somehow survived the attack and stood up and was able to roll right and killed it. I mean, we had God, that reminds me of we had
was that the game with Kenny?
Yeah. Then we had a Wily War Game weekend here, which is I hate to tell you this, but my house is big enough that we set up 6 different wargaming tables inside my house, and I know that you play with 15s because you said that real estate's too expensive in Hawaii, so that's why you did it. But we had one of the games was a big fantasy battle, and one of the teams was bugbears, and they were all named like Brian, Bill, Bob, and I give them all B names, right?
Right.
Well, one of them was named Brian, and he was killing everything on the table, right? He just was destroying. Finally, one of the guys was able to kill Brian. So from then on, that guy, his name is Chris. His name is Chris the Brian Killer. So whenever we have war games and stuff, my wife prints up the little name tags for everyone. His says Chris the Brian Killer for forever from now on. And so he gives a good story when people can ask, why are you the Brian Killer? He can go, well, it's because. So
pull up a chair.
Exactly. Let me tell you about it.
But you have to go through you got to do the work, right? Like you got to send the waves of guys that just get mowed down,
murdered,
because there's the one guy, it's 1 in 100. Well, if you don't send the 99, you're not going to get the 100.
Exactly. And it wasn't that he was
that guy is part of the journey.
Yeah, and it wasn't that he was a particularly special character. He just did really well. So anyway, yeah.
The roles were there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that D&D started as a war game, and I maintain it never stopped. We just forgot.
Yeah.
And
the whole reason that there is initiative, hit points, all of that stems from the fact that it was a war game at one time.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the guys that I run with in online circles, we still treat it that way. Like when we sit down to play, and we play mostly online, a guy will say, well, listen, I'm going to be the one of the guys. He runs a caveman faction. And so there was a caveman dropped into the campaign, and the DM didn't know what to do with it. So one of the players said, well, I'll run him. And we went to when you look at the monster manual, it tells you the number appearing. Orcs appear 40 to 400. So the DM said, okay, look, just roll for the number of cavemen you have, and I'll let you have one kind of dinosaur, pick one kind you want. And so, he started a faction that was the United Caveman Federation. He did something similar where he had 5 caves. It was A, B, C, D, E, and the chiefs of each cave were named after the first one started with A, B, C, and it became, we've run like chainmail battles to resolve some of these huge conflicts. Most of the games are just regular dungeon delves and kind of, the typical what you think of as D&D, but the complication is that we will raid each other's fortresses. So like one guy will say, listen, I'm going to run on Thursday night. Who wants to go? And the people that show up say, yeah, we want to go, right, try to break into the vault of the Vampire King. And so the adventure becomes, and he'll call the guy and say, hey, tell me a little bit about your castle. He'll run an event and he'll call the guy and go, yeah, listen, they got half your loot. And so now the Vampire King hates those players. And you can do a competitive, like head-to-head style of D&D if you can kind of embrace the style of play that war gamers never lost. Exactly. If you abandon we're all telling one, kind of railroady story that, we all have influence, and maybe the DM doesn't have it all designed, but you can run different groups with D&D, and it expands your possibilities. And in a lot of ways, it's easier because no one person has to remember everything that's going on. We just kind of all, if you can kind of, lay back and take more of a Zen approach, it works really well. Highly recommend.
Yeah, we do every other Thursday now because of COVID. We couldn't play wargaming anymore, and so we started going back to playing D&D again, and online, of course. And then once we were able, everyone was vaccinated, and we were able to get back together again, then we didn't want to give up the D&D, so we set up every other week.
Right.
So now it's D&D this Thursday, next week it's Wargaming, next week, and the week after, and all that kind of stuff. Steve, talk to him for a second. I have to take a break.
No, it's worked great. And I think and Jay would know, when he put out the solo rules, I think it wasn't that like year 2 of the pandemic. So it's like when he was saying about D&D, we were not playing D&D. We were doing tabletop gaming every week, but then when the pandemic hit, we had to stop meeting in person. And so we started playing D&D online with each other through Teams or Zoom or what have you. And we did that. What's been going on like 2.5 years now. And so when things started opening up and we started getting back into it, back into tabletop gaming, like Jay said, we've been switching off week to week, where 1 week we do D&D, 1 week we do wargaming. But things that I was noticing, like that you said, there are things that we'll do in D&D that I think are fueling some ideas that we're doing for our tabletop game.
Sure.
We're not playing out scenarios from D&D, but there are things there that it's like, oh, that's our DM is really, really good. And there's just some things I noticed that I'm like, oh, that'd be a great game if we did something like this and did something like this with Fistful of Lead or something. But it's going from playing tabletop games every week to now like every other week. It's been, I enjoy it. I enjoyed both of them, but I think it does fuel some ideas, the D&D stuff for our tabletop.
Solo
and it keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
Solar RPG guy says that me and you need to do a video series, but my team always gets to contain an owlbear. But no,
I'm down for it. I'm up for the challenge.
I did a lot of virtual games, so I know how to do it. So we could do a virtual one-on-one. I could set up the table and have the cameras and all that kind of stuff. So we just got to work out the whole time thing.
Yeah, I just jumped into a Ravenloft campaign that's a little bit bonkers today. I'm looking forward to getting into that. Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's faction play. So one guy has the mummy, and it's so in the Ravenloft setting, it's a bunch of pocket dimensions that the big bad and his dudes can't cross across the borders. We're not going to do that. So one guy's claimed the mummy, one guy's claimed the vampire. I'm not prepared to announce what I'm doing yet. And one guy just basically brought in Twin Peaks from the TV show. So like the Black Lodge is going to be part of it. And then they're all just going to have one guy's doing like the Spanish Inquisition that's going to defeat them all. And then, at some point we'll sit down and go, well, we need some PCs to run around and like tip the balance, because as our plots start to intersect, it's almost like a game of diplomacy, where you'll go off and it's all run kind of in real time. So you'll go in DMs and you'll ask the guy, hey, listen, I need some information from you. What do you need from me? Okay, I'll send my hit team out to hit this guy. And so you get all these weird plots that the DM doesn't even know what's going on until it all kind of comes to a head, and you have like this big, battle royale, and then, it just keeps building on itself.
Yeah, we get our little chatter in the well, we'll just text each other while we're playing. Kill this guy.
Yeah.
But it's usually about the other players. It's usually about the other players. Man, I wish he would shut up, or stab him in the back before he takes that. Yeah. We've got some players that are playing. I don't know. They're not playing their characters. The holy man. The holy man's the guy who wants the gold more than anyone else. Well, I guess that's not too far off. But
what's your go-to genre of figures for gaming?
I probably have more fantasy figures than anything else.
Okay.
So that's probably my go-to, but I've been getting way more into the historicals over the last year, and more black powder. So one of the things that I've done to kind of consciously limit, because you guys know how it is, you spend too much, the lead pile gets too big. So I've like consciously decided I'm gonna do fantasy, sci-fi, and black powder, and that's pretty much it.
And apparently Age of Sail.
Well, yeah, well that yeah, it does tend to get out of control, but by limiting it to those 3 eras, I can kind of like keep control, and just it's a way to, you know, not spend more money than I really need to, and to really focus on those areas and do them right.
Yeah, mine's driven by the next event, so it's usually we got a convention coming up and we're putting on this sort of game. So like, for instance, at Recruit, Steve is doing a big Masters of the Universe game, and we decided it's all going to take place inside of Snake Mountain. So I've been printing all kinds of terrain for snakes and, you know, big snake statues and stuff like that. And, or, you know, it's been mixed the last year, or we'll just have I'm like, what are we going to play this Thursday? And Steve will go, oh, well, let's do this. And then I'll start painting crazy for that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't believe you get some of that stuff done as fast as you can, because it's like we're swamped, and my time to paint is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
You weren't here, so I got this lovely airship that's going to be for this is
is that the Victorian?
So, well, it's actually going to be, this is the closest I have found to the way that Burroughs described the flying ships in John Carter. So,
the Barsoomian ships. Yeah.
It's a Barsoomian ship. I painted the rudders in blue, so that's a helium ship. So I'm going to do a whole John Carter-esque just air battle with those. So
love to see it. Yeah,
that'll be awesome. I already have a Mars terrain, so that I'm gonna. And then I want to do a Space 1889-ish kind of separate thing that's going to be like Martians for that, and do a whole colonization of Mars kind of campaign too. So,
well, hey, I hate to do this to you guys, but I got to get to work.
We got to go. We got to go too. So,
I'm doing 3rd shift these days, so I'm just about to clock in as the sun's going down. But I have had a great time talking to you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We'll try to set up a game with you. So
I would love it.
I appreciate you coming on, and
very much.
We will definitely have you on again, because I think we've got a bunch of cool ideas.
Well, thank you very much.